Okay, I just filmed the one video about my experience with the reverse culture shock coming back to Korea after several years living in the States. Now I'm gonna film another video about my experience teaching English in Korea. I heard this is the best lipstick for winter cold. I'm obsessed with my new hair, black. Love it. So I film with my 16-inch laptop. How am I gonna set it up here? I didn't realize this until now, but like a lot of my colleagues actually came to Korea with the English teaching visa. And I didn't know a lot of people are interested in getting an English teaching job in Korea. So let me just share a little bit of my experience. I know a lot of people like teach English as their like full-time job, like 9 to 5, but to me it was just a part-time job, so it was not a huge part of my life. But since I have that experience, let me just share a little bit of that with you guys. And the reason why the camera setup is like this is because I cannot figure out how to like set up, like where to set up my like video here. Is it better? I mean, like, even if I said it was definitely not a huge part of my life, but it was definitely an interesting segment, interesting chapter in my life. So just to clear things up, I actually have a Korean citizenship. So like I didn't have to all the like visa stuff. I know like for a lot of people when you are dealing with like visa stuff, a lot of things get like way more complicated. So just letting you know, I'm speaking from the perspective from someone who had that advantage. So in Korea, there are two main types of English academies. Like we call it hagwon. One is focused on academic English, like helping students get like good grade in school. And the other down here is more focused on like ESL, English as a second language. It definitely focuses more on like speaking, like listening, having actual like conversation in English. And I worked at ESL hagwons, and it was definitely an interesting experience. Now, the academic English academies, like, let me just say hagwon, okay? Like, everyone knows the hagwon, right? Like, hagwon are way more strict, and it's like way more common here in Korea. Like, as kids get older, they usually transition into like those because like their parents want them to do well on tests and, you know, get better grades, which is understandable. But the ESL hagwons are a little more, like just a little more laid back. At least at like hagwons that I worked at, it's all about like conversations, practical like English, how to have like conversations. So my students were from the age of like, who's the youngest one? The youngest one was like 6, 7, and the oldest student that I had he was like in his mid-50s, if I remember correctly. To share a little bit of my experience at like hagwon, one thing I learned during my time at hagwon is to, okay, this might sound weird, but I'm just gonna say it, to always keep recording. I didn't know this until I was put in a like tricky situation. So here's a story. Hear me out. One day I had a student who lied to their parents, saying I was being too strict or even like I was disciplining them, which was not the case. I remember like the parent was using the term like tobar. So this kid literally lied to their parents that I punished him. Like, for what? Like, I didn't do that, like, first of all. Story time. As a part of curriculum, we were required to record our, like, one-on-one sessions with the students every couple of weeks. Like, I would say, like, 2 to 3 weeks. And we would need to, like, send those recordings to parents. Since it was, like, ESL Academy, my classes were mostly about, like, having conversation in English. Like, listening, speaking, like, all that jazz, And my role was to ask level appropriate questions to help students to, answer in their own words. Like, for example, like if they are like 6, 7, we had really casual conversation like, hi, how are you? What is your name? What is this color? What's your favorite color? All that kind of stuff. Like from that to even like philosophical questions, like what is life, all that kind of stuff. And I don't even know what life is, but as a teacher I was pretending I know all that shit. But anyway, that's not the point of this story. And when we recorded these like sessions, we went to a separate room to ensure there was like no background noise and to make sure the students felt like comfortable, because like they like some of them might feel shy to speak English, to speak their second language in front of others. So like we went to a separate room just to make them feel comfortable. So one day I brought one of my students to this like separate room. I started a recording because that's what I was asked to do. I brought on 8-year-old boy to this like recording room, and like as soon as I hit record, he started acting out. Like he was saying inappropriate things, not sitting in his chair, and just being disruptive. Like as a teacher, what am I supposed to do? Like, I mean, at least like I tried at least like 10 minutes to have like English conversations with them, but it was not working. I mean, at that point I couldn't teach him anything. Like in that situation, how can you teach anything? Like all I could do was just tell him to sit up straight. I tried at least for like 10 minutes, but when I couldn't get through to him, I was like, okay, I give up. I decided to like have him just step outside of the like room and go back to his classroom, because like what else can you do? And I kept recording until the door closed behind him. And the next day I found out, okay, wait, let me set up the camera real quick. And the next day I found out that kid's like parents called the manager and saying their kid told them I was disciplining him in even in like a violent way. Like fortunately the manager listened to the whole recording, like heard everything, how like he was saying inappropriate things, and the manager shared that recording to the parents. Imagine if I hadn't recorded everything. It could have been a nightmare, to be honest. Like, as I mentioned, all of my experiences were at like ESL hagwons, like English as a second language. So it was a little more laid back, but there were some like funny things that I had to deal with. Like for one, I was not allowed to speak Korean. I had to pretend that I was Korean American, which is not the case. Like this was kind of wild because like I knew all the teachers could speak Korean, and like but the rule was no Korean, especially in front of students. Like you cannot even just like hint students that you can speak Korean, because you have to keep everything in English. Also, like not only at like inside hagwon, when you are stepping outside of a hagwon, there's a building, there's a town, you don't know who are like parents, right? So you are not supposed to speak Korean in that town. That was a part of the contract. No, actually, that was not a part of the contract, but that was not written in the contract. But when I was signing the contract, that was the first thing that the manager told me. Like, you're not supposed to speak Korean. You pretend you are a Korean American. Like, why do I have to fake my identity? Anyway, everything, like, a lot of things are possible in this, like, economy. Anyway. So, like, even though I was living 30 minutes away from hagwon, the second I stepped on the bus to head to hagwon, I stopped speaking Korean. I didn't want to get fired. Another thing, I think this one is pretty understandable, is tattoo. I do have a couple of tattoos, but none of them looks intimidating or like scary or anything like that. But I wasn't allowed to expose those like images to my students, which is understandable. So I was always wearing like long sleeves, and I was not doing this. I get it, like Korean culture is a little more conservative in that way, and still like, especially when it comes to like students, I understand. One thing to be aware, like if you are in Korea and if you want to get English teaching job in Korea, when you go to that interview, maybe like you might want to consider covering that up. Like one thing that I was lucky about was that I didn't have to deal with Korean parents. So that's a huge thing. Like if you know how Korean parents can be. To be completely honest, I'm not here to bash like anyone or like Korean culture, but a lot of people here, a lot of parents here are helicopter parents, but they don't even know that they are helicopter parents. I mean, like to be completely honest, like if you know, oh shit. Oopsie, stay there. Okay. Like, to be completely honest, if you know anything about Korean academic culture, it's pretty intense. Like, I do acknowledge that. And there's a lot of pressure on kids to do well, and sometimes the parents are a bit too much. Some of the parents, like, at least I've seen, are a little, like, overbearing, sometimes, like, too much involved. They're, like, constantly hovering and making sure their kids are doing well. Okay, can I say something? So I do understand Korea has very rigorous, strict academic standard, and you do want your kids to do well in school, right? But why don't you teach your kids to behave themselves first? I think that's the first thing to do, right? Like a lot of kids that I taught in like hagwons, they're so rude. They're fucking rude. Like I personally think it doesn't really matter even if you get like all like straight A's, but your like personality and the way you behave yourself as a human being is fucked up. You're just fucked up. You're just a fucked up human being. At least that would be my parenting philosophy. Now, this is coming from someone who is a single as fuck, who does not have parents. I have parents who does not have kids. This is coming from someone who doesn't have a parent. This is coming from someone who doesn't have kids and who doesn't have experience raising kids. So I might be wrong. Yeah, but if I were a parent, I would discipline my kids first to be a decent human being first, and then send them to academies to do better academically, if that makes sense. I don't know who I'm talking to, but someone needs to hear it. Someone needs to say it. Okay. Back to the story. Teaching English in Korea was definitely an interesting experience. And while it wasn't a huge part of my life because I was a part-time employee, I didn't work like 9 to 5 like teaching English. I've learned a lot. Based on my experience, teaching English in Korea can be a bit challenging, especially if that involves like dealing with Korean parents. I'm not saying every Korean parents are like that, but I think if you are looking to get like English teaching job in Korea, I think it might be helpful for you to be aware that Korea has a very strict, rigorous academic culture, and there might be some strict rules that you might have to like stick to as a teacher. If you want some unique experience, that's definitely a way to go. Try it out. I don't know. I think I was yapping for how long? I don't know. Anyway, I hope this video gave you a little bit of insight, at least a little bit of insight, into what's it like teaching English in Korea. If you have any questions or if you want to know more, please comment down below. I'll try to make another video. And can I say it? Can I sound like a YouTuber real quick? Like and subscribe. Bye. Oh, I can't. I just appreciate you guys. Bye-bye.